Welcome to another edition of Up Front with Dennis Vilfort, the storage strategist. And today we have two very exciting guests. We have Brian Moore and Doug Perdue. And Brian is actually with Scripps Networks Interactive. And Brian, what is it that Scripps, what do you guys do?
We provide cable networks for home and garden television, the do-it-yourself network, food network, travel channel, cooking channel, and Great American Country.
Wow. So these are all the channels I watch. So you must have a big data center there.
We do, and growing.
And growing, huh? Just in terms of data, because obviously we here at EMC, we love data. So how much data do you think you have under management today?
We're upwards of 1.6 to 1.7 petabytes, and that should probably grow up to the 2 petabytes by the end of 2012.
So are these all is the video files, or is it a combination of video and business data? And can you talk a little bit more about that?
Yeah, it's a combination of business and broadcast content. It's also our digital content as well for online.
Also, if I want to go and see a cooking show, I go to your website and I can click on an episode I may have missed.
Correct.
Okay. And is that high def and all that these days? In other words, are these big files?
They are. And again, like I said, they're growing. So.
Yeah, it's funny. It never goes from high def to lower def. It always goes higher and higher resolution, doesn't it?
Yeah, nobody ever says I'm going to need less storage next year.
So let's talk a little bit about what were some of the problems you had in the past, because I know you recently rolled out whole bunch of EMC products, unified storage, like the 3100 and also VNX. So can you talk a little bit about where were you and what was the journey to where you are today?
Originally, the issues that we encountered were just a broad array of vendors. We had each of our groups took over their own storage and managed their own storage. So growth was a pain, flexibility was a pain, and leveraging technologies really was a tough spot for us because we had so many different vendors at play. So once we had a single point for management of storage, we kind of took on the task of consolidating, trying to get into at least 2 vendors that we could, hopefully down into 1 vendor, and trying to get more efficient use of what we had. You know, growth for us meant anytime there was a significant application or a significant need that came along, a purchase was required to fill that growth. So we've been able to consolidate and at the same time efficiently use what we have, basically based on some of the technologies that we've got in play today, whether it be thin provisioning or fast, or we've driven up our efficiency from around 35% utilization to about 75% utilization, which is where I want to kind of keep it going forward. I want to have the capacity on hand to handle any spikes, but I also want to make sure that we're getting the most out of our storage spend.
Wow. So you're saying basically you were at 35 before, and now thanks to your efficiency initiatives, you are now talking about like 70, 75%? So you actually doubled or tripled your efficiency essentially.
Correct. And over time, most people when they ask for storage, they're always going to ask for twice, 3 times, 4 times what they really need. And by employing some of the technologies, we've been able to give them what they think they need and manage it, on our end and actually use what we have.
So you're talking about like thin provisioning and consolidation, those types of techniques. What about have you also deployed deduplication?
We did. Traditionally, we were a Windows file share shop with SAN attached storage on the back end, and we've deployed some. Mainly the VNX has kind of pushed us along this way as we moved all of our Windows file shares to NAS-based file shares and turned on dedupe. Across the board, we've seen significant numbers there. Anytime you have a user file share and emails being swapped around, everybody's going to have the same copy of the same file. So it's greatly increased our efficiency again to use what we have. A 4 terabyte file share that's actually only using a terabyte due to dedupe is a huge win.
You're talking about, well, before you were sort of like at 4 full terabytes. Now you're basically deduped that down to 1.
Yeah, and I'm using that just as an example. I think we've probably averaged maybe 40% across the board. But like I said, in some, we were seeing upwards of 80 and 90% dedupe.
Well, that's fantastic. That certainly does a lot for your effective utilization of the storage system, as opposed to a lot of wasted space by multiple copies of the same data. Now, there's also a performance aspect on this, not just the capacity, but also making sure people get the right data at the right time. And I understand you recently turned on fast and had some great results to share with us.
We did. We originally saw fast as a win for one of our in-house applications. It's an off-the-shelf app that we purchased. It's vital for one of our revenue streams. And the performance, it's a SQL, Microsoft SQL backend, and the performance was really lagging. We didn't have a way to make it highly available. So we originally put in Flash kind of as a proving ground. We put in Flash PCI cards with Fusion IO just to see if the performance would be increased by doing so, and it was. We saw at that time probably 40% performance increase by just using the Flash PCI cards. The problem with that was we had no way to make it highly available. So the VNX came along, and we decided that, hey, let's go ahead and get this and see if this is something that we can utilize for this particular application. We did. Made it highly available. We're seeing 50% gains just in the performance of their searches and their sorts within the database. The DBAs really in tune with the performance characteristics of their database, which is it's beneficial for us to be able to provide those types of performance increases for them when they know exactly what the benchmark is. So they were blown away by it. We were able to show them, hey, these are the hot spots within your app, just by the data being moved within the tiers of storage within the VNX. And we can report on that and show them exactly how their database performs.
That's very good. Most data is actually lopsided, and if you can identify the hot part of the data and put that in Flash, and then cold data and stick that onto cheap and cheerful mechanical drives, then not only do you save money, but you also get much better performance. So it's interesting what you mentioned, though, by the way, the need for high availability. You're basically saying, hey, PCIe cards, don't give me that. What do you mean when you say that?
Right. I mean, each server, in a highly available situation, you have two plus servers. Each server has their own PCI card within the server hardware itself. There's no way to share that between 2+ servers. So anytime a failover would occur, that would have to be rebuilt on the gaming system in the cluster. So by using SAN-based Flash technology, we were able to cluster those systems and have it shared across all members of the cluster.
And that even gave you better performance, it sounds like. You mentioned before, 40% performance increase by using PCIe, but then not only was it highly available on the SAN, but it's also like 50% faster?
Right.
Did you use those machines also to create new data? In other words, the PCIe card, was that just read cache, or was it also used for write caching?
It was used for both. They use the way the app's written, it uses a temp space within the database and it sorts in and out of that space. So that's the area that we were using for Flash. Originally, again, this kind of drives up the utilization as well, is originally to get that performance that they had, we had to add spindles within RAID groups across 15 spindles to get them the performance that they needed. So we were able to reduce, you take 15 spindles of 300 gig fiber channel drives and reduce that down to the 200 gig that you actually need for the database temp space, then you've increased your efficiency 80 to 90%.
Excellent. So Doug, you helped Brian architect all that. What were some of the things we found when we were working together on setting this up?
The interesting thing was exactly what you just hit upon, was the number of spindles across multiple arrays that we're now, and Brian, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think we're probably only about 50% of the way of getting all that data collapsed into the new VNX off of the old CX arrays and the Hitachi boxes.
Yeah, we're a little further along now. We're probably in the 60 to 70 range.
Okay. So as we're going through looking at those older boxes, CX500s, CX700s, and a couple of different models of Hitachi arrays, we were at well over 600 disks between 4 EMC arrays and 2 Hitachi arrays to support this diverse set of workload. And now we're looking at collapsing that down. And right now, at the time the configuration was laid in, there were about 125 drives, I think, in the VNX 5700. So you're seeing the number of SATA drives being utilized increasing from what it was in the older box. You're seeing a a small number of SAS drives replacing the fiber channel drives, and then a much smaller number of flash drives going in. And that combination is supporting the workload that between 400 and 600 drives we're providing across the board. So it's that utilization going up and efficiency and performance going up all at the same time that I think is really interesting in how this configuration came together.
It's exactly the strategy that we call flash first, which means if you get the flash part of the equation right and you dynamically move the data, then hey, you can put cheap and cheerful storage for the cold data, all day long, because that seems to be by far the most cost-effective way to solve that problem. So you did both. That's fantastic. That's very, very good. So is that also because that in the nature of your business, a lot of the data tend to be heavily skewed? Can you talk a little bit about how big a percentage was it that was highly performant, and how big a percentage is it that doesn't need that high performance of flash but could dynamically be moved to high-capacity spindles?
On average, 15% of our data we see is considered hot. The rest of it, I would say another 30% would be in that lukewarm area, and the rest of it's cold. Upwards of 50% of our data is unused data. And I say unused, I mean it's used on a much lower frequency than what the upper tier of it would be. So we're able to move that down to the SATA drives, as Doug explained, and gain higher efficiency.
That's fantastic. So high efficiency along two vectors, the performance vector and also the dollars per gigabyte vector in terms of capacity efficiency. So what about the end users? What did they say? What was their reaction to this new strategy? Did they like it, or what did they say?
It depends. Most, have no clue, right? I mean, that's...
That's a good thing.
Yeah. All they know is, it's kind of binary to them, up or down, right? It's available or not available. But I know the ones that have a close finger on how their application's performing have heard nothing but good job, pats on the back, attaboys, and it's really brought us to the forefront of us making technology decisions that are really making an impact to the business, all the way up to the CTO level of us being able to put a plan in place to reduce storage spend as storage grows over time. So that's definitely one of the things that's benefited us moving forward and hopefully further into the future.
Yeah, that makes sense. So basically you're buying for what you need to buy for, as opposed to in the old days you had to buy a bunch of spindles just to get performance, but you couldn't really use the capacity efficiently enough. So also, we're almost out of time, but I want to make sure we also cover something else. Now you have points of presence, you have offices all over the world, right? And I also happen to know that you recently deployed a bunch of VNX-E. Can you talk a little bit about your experience there? Is that moving along?
It is. Historically, at each one of our remote offices, we've had some type of storage, whether it be direct attached or SAN attached, with whatever apps are required at the remote offices, whether it be a domain controller or print services, DHCP, things, and file shares too. So we needed something that would allow us to virtualize some of those systems at the remote offices and also allow us to do some file sharing off of it. Most of our remote offices don't have IT experience, so a lot of times we're calling an admin assistant to change tapes or kind of put hands on machines for us. So now, while deploying the VNX-E's, what that's allowed us to do is to do file shares as well as have block-based storage for the virtualization of the servers that are at each one of the spots. So it's also cut our backups off tape. Now we're doing replication back here to our main data center in Knoxville and pulling it off on tape here.
Perfect. So you're basically automated the whole data capture and data protection. But you said something that was very interesting. You said that you didn't have IT personnel out there. So people are managing this stuff themselves, but they're not IT personnel?
Well, we manage it remotely as much as we can, but you always have to have some kind of hands-on during the life cycle of the machines. Some of them are quasi-trained now, that they've done it for so long, especially like tape swaps and things like that. But that's not really in their job description. So we were doing the best to pull that off of them and put the management solely back on us. Over time, our decision was to consolidate on EMC based on the history and the experience that we have within the storage group itself. Don't want to go out and have to learn new technologies or a new platform, so we've moved forward with the EMC consolidation.
Perfect. Thank you very much. So thank you very much, Brian. I really appreciate you having time to dial in and share some of your experiences with us. And also thanks to Doug for sharing some of the insights as to how we actually managed to get rid of a bunch of disk drives. Thanks again, guys. It was an absolute pleasure.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
And that's another edition of Upfront with Dennis Vilfort, the storage strategist here at EMC. Thank you so much for listening.